You want to introduce?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you to those of you who were able to reschedule. We had some technical issues on Friday. And for those of you who are unable to join us because of the newly scheduled time, we'll be sure to record and share this presentation with you. To start, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jonas, who is the head of the Prime Secretariat, and he will kick off the webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Meryl, and thanks for everybody who has called in, and of course also to Dan and Sora, our co-presenters. And you will hear from both Dan and Sora in the course of this presentation. What we have in mind today is to give an introduction to, of course, the Global Management Challenge and the way the Prime Initiative, the Prime Secretariat, is partnering with the Global Management Challenge, and in general look at the value of simulations for business schools and for business schools especially who are engaged in the Prime Initiative. Let me take some few minutes in the beginning just to introduce everybody to the Principles for Responsible Management Education initiative, and then I'll hand it over to Dan and to Sora to explain the value of simulations and also the Global Management Challenge. So with that, let's go to the next slide. As a background to why the United Nations has, for the last 12-15 years, more intensely worked with non-state stakeholders, let me briefly talk about the United Nations Global Compact, which is the organization that launched the Principles for Responsible Management Education in 2007. The UN Global Compact is the United Nations premier platform for interaction between, on the one hand, the United Nations, and on the other hand, business and other stakeholders around the idea to work in a partnership to create a more sustainable and inclusive global economy. The UN Global Compact is based on a set of values and 10 principles which business, companies around the world are asked to embrace. These 10 principles are outlining the areas of human rights, good workplace practices, environmental standards, and one principle on anti-corruption. And currently in 2012, 12 years after having been established, the Global Compact counts over 10,000 participants, out of which over 6,000 are businesses. Back in 2007, and that leads now directly. Oh, here's one more. So the idea behind Global Compact is to advocate that companies worldwide, be it multinationals but also small and medium-sized enterprises, deliver and engage around the concept of corporate sustainability and begin to deliver and think about their value creation in a long-term perspective, and at the same time, of course, address financial needs and have a solid financial return, but also address social, environmental, and ethical considerations. So the basic definition of corporate sustainability you see here on that slide. Back in 2006, 2007, there was a large response and a big also feedback from company CEOs and telling us here at the United Nations and the Global Compact that in order to really make an inroad into corporate sustainability, we do need to bring on board these stakeholders who are very crucial in that field. And one of the important strategic partners that was pointed out to us was the educational sector, and especially business schools and management educators who have a direct influence on future business leaders. And so you see here a study from 2010 that the United Nations Global Compact conducted, that over 88% of the CEOs surveyed that were part of the Global Compact at this time said that in order to reach a tipping point for corporate sustainability, these CEOs think or thought that it is important to bring educational systems and business schools into the fold and equip future business leaders with the mindset and skills needed to manage sustainability. That back in 2006, 2007 then led to the development of a new initiative that is part of the United Nations Global Compact and that reaches out to management education providers, business schools, or faculty of management in universities. And the initiative, PRIME, as we call it, has a basic charge to encourage business schools and faculty of management to change curriculum, the research focus, and learning methods based on the principles that the Global Compact advocates for in companies. I don't want to go much into detail now about PRIME because we do want to focus in today's call on the Global Management Challenge, but just to point out that one of the 6 principles of PRIME talks about methods, so teaching and learning methods, and the principle number 3, which is highlighted on this slide, shows one of the ways we can foresee the Global Management Challenge and simulations in general to play a role in PRIME. So we talk here about schools and business school providers or education providers to create or to be encouraged to create educational frameworks, materials, and processes that enable effective learning experiences for responsible leadership. So I will now turn it over to Dan, and the idea here is to get a first idea of how simulations could help PRIME as an initiative and individual business schools that are engaged in PRIME to make sense of especially this 3rd principle. And I'm eager to hear what the Global Management Challenge can also going forward contribute to PRIME's mission and PRIME's objectives. So I'm handing it over now to Dan and looking forward to the comments and the feedback from the community that is part of the PRIME initiatives. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Jonas. Just before Dan speaks, that's Dan Davidson. He's the marketing director of Edit 515. We have a short video to play.
Hello?
Great, Dan, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
That's fine. Okay, thanks so much. The video was just a brief introduction to the Global Management Challenge, and what I'd like to do now is to go through a presentation showing the developments that we have in hand and how these would link to the prime objectives. So why is simulation so important? Well, it allows a realistic competitive business environment to be created at low cost and low risk, and this is especially suitable for the academic and business situation. The teaching and learning objectives, it allows insights into the complexity of a business environment for those who haven't been involved in business. It shows the skills required to manage a competitive business scenario and introduces elements of sustainability and risk to products and businesses. So that's the overall view. In an academic environment, it enables students to operate as a group. Normally, students study a topic and they study it on their own. With a simulation, you can have 5, 6 students working as a group and learning how to operate a business as a group. Feedback from the academic world says that it sensitizes the students to the value of subsequent classroom courses and lectures, so that they're aware of where these lectures fit into the global business scenario. And directly to the students, it identifies skill deficiencies because they see other people in the group who can do things that they know that they should be able to do, so it encourages them to then go and learn these skills. In a national and international competition like the Global Management Challenge, it gives a measure of team competence against the experts, not just the individuals, but how the team ranks against the best. And it also gives status back to the team, to the business if they're playing as a business, or the university if they progress to the final, and then it becomes an international kudos at that level. I'm showing here a traditional organizational chart where we have marketing, production, human resources, and finance. And these are the structures that initially the teams can learn to operate in. If we look at what previously had been the function of the managing director, it was always seen that his prime function was to improve shareholders' value, and everything was then tilted towards finance. In order to run a business, then the financial sector would be using the balance sheets and financial statements. So they would be looking at profit and loss, and hopefully if they have a profitable company, then two things happen: the net assets increase, dividends increase, and the share price increases, and the managing director would be very happy. However, in order to achieve that, then these various functions within the company have to operate together and not have marketing, glory hunting, going ahead and having marketing master plans that production can't produce, or they don't have the finance or staff training, etc. So that's the initial purpose of simulation. But there are intended consequences if everything is geared towards making a profit. Then the environment can suffer. because that previously wasn't seen as a concern of the managing director or any of the others. Also on sustainability, the actual materials can be threatened and the risk to the company. And I'll talk about that later. So we may wish to say, well, what should the managing director be doing? And I've set up a proposal here to say, is it to achieve sustainability and protect the environment while giving a fair return to shareholders so that everything isn't geared entirely to profit? Now, what we've been doing in EDIT and with the Global Management Challenge is actually moving towards the principles that are being promoted by the United Nations, and this is a direction that we are quite happy to go along in. So that the learning agenda that we have, using what we call a virtual business environment, and that's using the simulation to create a business environment, is to use simulation technology to shape more effective and responsible business leaders. And that would include sustainability of the company and materials and risk. So that we would now, instead of purely concentrating on the outcome as finance, be saying that we have to highlight things such as design, development, training, maintenance, subcontracting, material supply, as well as finance, so that we widen the scope of the educational system to say these other things can be equally important. So that if we revisit the scenario we had before, we're really saying that from the development point of view, then inputs such as design, training and subcontracting can give you outputs on CO2 emission, risk and liabilities, and hopefully if the training is correct, then the inputs give added value and there's a reduction in the risk and increased sustainability. That's the objective. So that we would then have a different subgroup such as design, subcontracting, training and development that have to work together to produce the profitability, but also to go out to the environment and much further afield. We take the Global Management Challenge. This is an ideal way for academics and businesses to enter into a complex simulation. So it's the biggest international competition on strategy and management simulation. It's an ideal way to enter a national and international competition, and the simulation is created by EDIT 515, and I'm the representative of EDIT 515. Now, what I want to do is to say not only that we want to move in the direction that the United Nations has recommended, but in fact for 2013 we have developments which are going to bring on board. If we take production versus the carbon footprint, this is part of the output, so that we can see the amount of CO2 emissions, and these are related to heating and lighting and the energy used. Now, each company's primary carbon footprint is measured in terms of the energy used in its various processes. The company is able to offset its carbon footprint completely by paying a charity to plant trees. So we're moving in the direction of recognizing that it's not just expansion, but you've got to offset what happens from that expansion. Quality and premium materials. There that are both more environmentally friendly and of a superior quality. So again, there would be decisions to increase costs, but these would have value to the wider environment. And training, there'll be a number of training days, because you can't, in a company, keep abreast of everything that's happening unless you invest in training. Subcontracting, again, lots of companies subcontract, and these sometimes can have effects that were unintended. So this is becoming part of the simulation. And we've always had maintenance in the past, but later on I would highlight the importance of maintenance in sustainability. So the business assessment of what we're trying to do, we're saying that profitability is not enough, and we'll have to look at what steps are being taken for risk assessment, sustainability. Now, I would like to give some examples of situations where, in fact, these poor decisions were made, and the three I've chosen, and there are obviously others I could have chosen: Chernobyl, the nuclear power station in Russia, Lehman Brothers in America, the financial institution, and the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, which is still ongoing. Chernobyl now actually is becoming part, unbelievably, of a tourist attraction, so that you can go for a short time and see what happened at Chernobyl. But I'm basically interested in why it could have happened, what factors in the setup were important. And the critical areas were design. It was a water-cooled reactor, and if the power failed, then there was a danger of the water becoming steam and exploding. They recognized the design fault, so they had a plan to try to test this out to see if they could, in fact, survive power failure. Unfortunately, this was designed during the day, and the grid wanted the power station to function that day, so they passed it to the night shift, who didn't have the training, and the end result of these three functions was a disaster. Lehman Brothers is a financial situation where, when everybody was making money, that was fine. But when the cash ran out, the company ran out too. So the critical areas there, again, design, they had very complex financial products that were based on high risk, but they can't carry out a risk assessment correctly, and therefore this meant that the company wasn't sustained, and again was much wider. The results of this moved into the community, which is not what you're looking for. The Gulf of Mexico oil spill, again, the critical areas were things like maintenance, subcontracting, because they had subcontracted the rig, and what we're trying to do in the training that we give, using these complex simulations, is to highlight a range of decision-making functions for training and education that people can see in the real world, and develop an outward-looking management, not purely looking at what they do in a financial way. In summary, complex businesses need more multifactorial managers, and these don't just happen, they are trained, and not just experts in some narrow field that don't look at the broad scope of business. I would like to tell the people watching that I had carried out a previous webinar that was more concerned with the nuts and bolts of simulation, so that if they were interested, they could look at that and give you the details, but perhaps Zora can highlight this for you. So it had the same title, and this is the listing of the webinar. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and hope that gave the flavor of what we're trying to do for the Global Management Challenge and for education in detail. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks Dan. And I'd like to turn the presentation now over to Zora Zori, who is the President of Global Management Challenge USA.
Great, thank you so much. Meryl, I have my screen up. Is it showing full screen for all of you? Oh, it's going to show full screen in just a moment, I believe. Give me 1 second. There we go. Is it showing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan. I think that was very helpful to really show the intricacies of the simulation technology and how Global Management Challenge is looking at tackling the issues related to sustainability. What I'd like to do is maybe take a few minutes of your time and walk you through the steps on how the Global Management Challenge is set up, and how we are looking to organize teams here in the United States to participate in the challenge, and what kind of benefits and value proposition it brings to the participants. But I'll start off by just saying, and Jonas mentioned this at the beginning when he gave the overview of the PRIME initiative and the reason for our partnership and collaboration with them. One of the key reasons why we were collaborating with the PRIME initiative is that the Global Management Challenge wants to be beyond just teaching the principles of effective management. We want to teach and implant the ideas and the skills that people need to become effective and responsible managers while they're making decisions in consideration of the environment and thinking about long-term sustainability. So as our software transitions in the next year to incorporate more items related to sustainability, we're looking to learn from the PRIME initiative and seek their advice on the way forward. So a little bit about the Global Management Challenge, about our history. We were established in 1980 and based out of Portugal. We are currently operating in 40 different countries. And throughout our history, we've had nearly 500,000 participants be a part of our program in all of those countries. I've listed here on this slide some sample corporations that are participating, partnering, or supporting the Global Management Challenge around the world, and also some universities around the world and here in the United States that have participated in our program. We are very much an open-minded organization that seeks to involve the support and participation of corporations from various industries, as well as universities of different levels. So we are open to universities not only at a graduate level, not just the top 50 institutions in the United States, but also tier colleges and anyone that can really gain value from participating in our program. Some of our strategic partners here in the United States, when we launched our program, we came heavily with the support of our strategic partner, the New York Stock Exchange, and Fortune magazine as our official media partner. We've got a couple of presenting sponsors that are also heavy supporters of ours, and EDP Renewables is one of them, as well as the Hershey Company. What you don't see listed here from the corporate side are some of our other corporate participants, Stanley Black & Decker, Liberty Mutual, and CSX. With regards to strategic alliances, of course, in addition to the PRIME initiative, we're also partnered with the Global Business School Network, which focuses primarily on experiential learning, and ACDSP, which is one of the largest accreditation agencies in the world, and we're working through those networks as well to spread the word about global management and impact more people through their participation. Our methodology, and Dan hinted on this earlier, it's the whole fishing philosophy that I think many of us may be very familiar with. We learn by doing. So there's only so much that you can learn theoretically, but when you actually get your hands wet and experience something, that's when you will actually retain the knowledge. So the whole idea is that we learn by doing. And we have a few different categories of participants. I've got a couple of them highlighted here on this slide, so I'll just give you an overview of this. On the left-hand side, you see a bucket here of individuals that covers the corporate side. So a lot of corporations actually use their simulation technology for talent development. So within that talent development bracket, they use their simulation to train new managers. They also use it to train mid-level managers who have already gone through some initial training and maybe need some kind of a rejuvenation mid-career to get excited or to learn something new. And then they also use the Global Management Challenge as an opportunity to provide mentorship, because it is not necessarily something that's within the four walls of a classroom, but it's an opportunity to work together as a team, be accountable to one another. We're finding that a lot of companies are using those team setups. For example, we've got teams of anywhere between 3 to 5 individuals. They use those setups to bring together entry-level, mid-level, and a senior executive together on each of those individual teams to kind of ensure that as people progress throughout their career, they're learning, they're being mentored, and they're being connected with individuals whose shoes they would love to fill or who they would love to work alongside sometime in the future. So corporations use us for talent development, mentorship, and a rejuvenation opportunity of existing talent. While on the right-hand side, you see a category related directly to the universities. Within the university network, we are used as a skill development and experiential learning opportunity. We make available for university students that participate in our program career connections opportunities, because we have corporate participants and corporate partners that participate in our program. There's an opportunity for linkage and for resume sharing and for them to meet one another and interact. And then there's also that fun element, and sometimes we get caught up in the learning, which I think is great, but one of the things that we know for sure is in a university environment, they want to have fun. So they want to do something where there's a competitive element, and a lot of the students who participate, and especially when they get halfway through it, some of them who didn't even realize they had a competitive spirit, they have a chance to discover that and let that shine. And for the teams that really do get a chance to advance through our competition process, it gives them the opportunity to travel to various different locations and to network and meet not just corporate partners, but students from around the world that are passionate about the same things that they are. There's a third group that's not highlighted within here, and we typically just refer it to as to an open group. Sometimes there are professionals that work for various different companies that want to come together and formulate a team. Maybe they have a linkage through some personal connections. So we have an open category as well where individuals can register as a team. They don't necessarily have to be affiliated with a specific university or a specific company, and those we handle on a case-by-case basis. Okay. So how does it work? When teams register, and when they organize their teams of 3 to 5 individuals and they register to participate in the Global Management Challenge, their whole objective is to manage a virtual company and organize their team in a fashion that works best for them, whether it is cross-functional in nature, where each of the 5 individuals has a specific responsibility towards HR, finance, production, sales, and marketing, or one of those individuals is overseeing it as its general manager or CEO. They have the flexibility and freedom to formulate their teams in a way that makes sense to them. They're managing a virtual company over a 2 to 2.5 week period that is divided up into 5 quarters. So within each of those 5 quarters, and in that 2.5 week bracket, the teams come together and they make decisions that they submit online for each quarter, decisions related again to all of those corporate functions that I mentioned. And as they progress from each quarter, decision set number 1 is first quarter, decision set number 2 is second quarter. As they progress, we post on a portal that we make available during competition season how each of the teams are competing within their own groupings, and then also compared to all of the other competitive teams on a nationwide basis based on their share price. So right now, the main objective is the teams with the highest share price are the ones that are performing the best. We're looking at changing that in the next year, where it's focused on areas beyond that. But it's the share price that is the key objective. So what kind of decisions can the teams make to raise their share price, and then each quarter they get a chance to view how they're performing against the teams they're competing with until the very last quarter, which is the fifth one, when the final set of decisions will be submitted and the final results will be posted. So we have 4 rounds of competition. The first 2 are virtual. So teams don't necessarily have to be based in the same city, or they don't have to be in the same building. They can be virtual teams. Of course, it does help when people can meet face-to-face, but we've found people to work around that. The first 2 rounds are virtual, and each of them are about a 2 to 2.5 week time frame, with the first one beginning in January. January 25th is the first date. As teams progress through the first and second round of competition, when they reach the third round of competition, we will be inviting the top 8 teams to come to the New York Stock Exchange, our strategic partner in New York City, to compete for the national finalist title. And at the national final, we'll have a 1.5-day event. The first full day is the actual competition with a keynote speaker, a networking reception. The second day is an opportunity of professional development for them. So we are creating a special agenda focused on strategic management, decision-making, sustainability topics, bringing in a panel and experts to train our participants on those core areas. Once we elect at that national final the very top team in the United States, that team will then be invited to Romania for the international final, which will be taking place April 16th through the 18th. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of extra time on this slide to let you know how the competition is set up and what the process is like. Dan had covered this slide in his presentation. I'll just let you take a look at it at your leisure without spending too much time on it, but this also covers the core functional areas with how the teams are organized. And with environmental issues, Dan did a fantastic job of covering all of that for you already, but I've included a slide here as well to kind of reinforce the points that he has made. So in the upcoming edition of Global Management Challenge, we'll be incorporating more emphasis on environmental issues and responsible management and sustainability issues, which will help kind of reshape the types of decisions that our participants make. So what is the value proposition for our participants? Aside from networking and aside from the image building opportunity for corporations and universities, if I were to sum up this slide and just give you a few bullet points, I would say, you know, it's not only the image and the networking, but it's really about skill development. So there are key areas that participants develop their skills. It's decision making. Number 2 is teamwork. Number 3 is leadership. And number 4 is strategic management. And we are accredited by EFMD, the European Foundation for Management Development. We've been accredited with them for quite some time. Every 3 years, they do a reassessment of our program and reaffirm our accreditation. We're actually going through that again this year. And we're very excited to add elements of sustainability because that will help to secure our accreditation in the future as well. A key thing to note here also is that the participants who actually go through our program will receive a certificate from us that indicates the accreditation as well, and that's a great resume enhancer for the participants that are a part of our program. And without reading all of these for you, some of the things that make us different from, I think, a lot of competitor simulations out there, which I think are very valuable, we do find that a lot of simulation technologies tend to be focused on functional areas. So some might be just on finance or production or sales, whereas the Global Management Challenge covers so many different functions, and we have a large range of decision-making capabilities. So some simulations may only enable you to make 12 to, let's say, 18 or 20 decisions, whereas the Global Management Challenge for each round of the decision set in quarters enables you to make 66 decisions. So I think that might give you an idea of the complexity and also the ability that you would have to make so many different decisions without being obligated to make all 66. You have a wide range of decisions. We have a nationwide competitive platform. So we really do put people in the arena from the corporate side and the university side to compete against one another and have an opportunity to learn. We are truly international in scope, as I've been mentioning throughout the last few slides, and we are truly a team format. So we want teams to be formulated, make their own decisions, organize themselves in a way that makes sense to them, and then provide leadership for themselves. In some cases, you will find institutions that incorporate our program into their classroom, and that's perfectly fine because it does work with a lot of institutions. But we've seen the model where the university students organize themselves independently and really showcase their leadership skills, and we also encourage that. And so we would take that on a case-by-case, depending on the university, and brainstorm with them on what methodology and setup works for them. And I think I've covered all of these points in this slide. It just talks about the values for the corporations as well as the universities. And this slide gives you a snapshot of the actual competition timeline. So registration is actually underway right now, and we are registering many teams on a daily basis. The deadline for the registration for the first round of competition is January 23rd. Any team that wishes to participate must register by 23rd of January because that's when the first round begins. One cannot register after the second round or after the third round. It has to start by that period. And so the next steps for those of you that might be interested, we encourage for you to organize your teams today. We do have a registration platform. It's www.usamanagementchallenge.com/registration. And with the Prime Secretariat, we have, because they are a strategic alliance member of ours, we have offered them a number of sponsored registrations. So the Prime Secretariat will be sponsoring a handful of university teams so that you don't have to take on the financial burden. Typically, it is $1,000 per university team to participate, but you will be sponsored through the Prime Secretariat, so I will allow Meryl to kind of give you advice on how to best go about contacting them to learn a little bit more about it. I think that is it for now. If there are any questions, we welcome them.
Great, thanks, Dora. And so I'll ask any attendees, if you have a question, if you could, in the panel on the side, you should be able to raise your hand to indicate that you have a question. Mary, I see that your hand is raised. I'll unmute you. I'm not sure if it's raised accidentally or if you have a question. Okay, you've taken it down. Any questions from the group?
And maybe also let me just add in the meantime, while we wait for some further hands to go up. I mean, this is Jonas again here with the Prime Secretariat. Also, just let me say to both Sura and Dan, thank you. And I see already some progress on the way you are anticipating the challenge next year to go in terms of including some of the themes around responsible management. And that's really great to see. So the value, hopefully, even further, I mean, going even further than next year when this first competition is running for students and for schools which are trying to get their students to embrace the ideas behind the principles for responsible management education. So thanks for that, and it was great to see this presentation here, how you have managed to incorporate some of the prime principles into your work for the next competition. So we are hoping, if there are some questions, just raise your this hand button in the panel, and we can unmute your phone line.
Right, we'll see no questions. We'll conclude the webinar. Please feel free to email either myself, Meryl, or Zora, and we'll be sure to share this slideshow with you as well as the relevant links. And thank you so much for joining us. And thanks again to both of our presenters.